Today we are building a movie-accurate Biosyn Research Facility step by step. Quite literally, I mean. We are going the extra mile and building every single bit, including some interior parts. I did a bit of a stop motion as well to show you the process of the creation. But this is not all. You can see there is the inside, which I even did with some facilities in it. You can explore that as a map, don't you worry. But we're gonna talk about modularity a lot, because I think modularity is one of the best things to master in order to build really great stuff in Jurassic World Evolution 3. So let's begin exactly what this chapter 1 is all about. The modules of today's build. So sit back, relax, and hopefully you're gonna enjoy this massive build today. It is also a little bit longer than usual, so I tried to separate that in nice little bits, and you can skip through the different bits in, that wonderful bar, YouTube bar down below if you want to. But we are going to talk about every single bit as promised. You guys wanted to have a bit more explanation what's going on, so here we go. The modules we are starting with is a technique I think that evolved in the Planet Coaster game years and years ago, but the basic idea is that you create basically it's almost like a pizza slice, a pizza slice of what you want to create. And unless you don't want to have a mixed pizza, this slice is basically a perfect depiction of what the entire pizza is going to be. And the only thing you need to know is this one slice has to be perfect, and then you can multiply that that piece to create your entire pizza, as like a pizza wheel where you rotate them around and you got them. This is the way you do. And in this specific game over here, we do have to build this exactly at the size of 15-degree angle. So given you have a 50-degree angle, means that you will have to copy it around a couple of times, which to be precise is 16 times, which just makes sense because is that 16 or is that 26 times? That's what it is. But as you have both sides, it's basically half of it. Never mind, you don't need to worry about that. You have this central pivot point, which I did over the fountain that I have as a bit of a reference at the beginning. So what I did first, as you can see, was the inside wall, which defines how big the inner backyard kind of area is going to become. I have to talk about that inner backyard in a bit because movies are inaccurate. I'll put 2 shots now on screen, so you'll be able to see the difference here. So the problem is, to the top left you can see that trailer shot and it shows that huge inside area, but the actual set, the bottom right picture, shows you that this is way smaller than what the computer CGI model looks like. So the dimension of the whole building just doesn't fit in with the set they built. This is kind of a common thing in movies. Most likely you never really see that, but in this specific case, to make this as movie accurate as possible, I needed to overcome that issue a little bit by tricking the system. So even though it may seem the same, if you look closely to these two things, you will recognize that from the CGI image, from that opening shot where the helicopter flies into the scene, if you try to calculate how big the, atrium is in the middle, like that inner backyard, and then you look at the actual scene where they filmed it, the scene is way more cramped, way more dense, and if you try to measure exactly from the scene, you come to a certain height of the building, you can somehow reference that, and then if you put that on the other shot from the intro, there's no match. So I needed to overcome that issue, and I tried to find a balance between both. I think my inner backyard is slightly off because it's too big, but then again the whole building is slightly off because it's too small, but in its entirety it works. So what I did with the modules is, and also the reason why I built with modules is I still keep control over the size of them. So the way you do that, you have the pivot point, and from that central pivot point you put these pizza slices, as I called them earlier, in different distances, which will define the radius of the circle it's gonna make later on. So the inner one is a smaller circle, obviously, the outer one is a bigger circle. Now, let's say I do this and I try to circle around. You'll see that during the time lapse a little bit more often that I do circle around the building a couple of times to see exactly how wide it is and how nice it was, and to gain a feeling, you know, of the sizes and of the overall perspective. And once I'm happy with that, I can move them forth and back, or I'll leave them staying in the same area. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I also made the interior, and I figured that would be a nice idea. And also making this interior helped me also to figure out the size of the building, and this is the very last info I needed to understand that the sizes of the movie thing can't be accurate, you know. When you look at what the movie suggests the inner area, like the offices look inside, it's humongously big, you know. You have these different open areas, and there are rooms to the left and right, and basement and blah blah blah. And now this corridor I'm building over here, which in the real-time part we're going to walk this one, you'll see this is a pretty standard-ish corridor of, let's say, 4 meters of width. And if you project that onto our build, the entire build couldn't even house more than, let's say, 4 of these corridors and cram some smaller rooms in between. That is way too small. That would never work that way. But this is kind of often the way how it goes in movies. They don't need to worry about that. It's almost like Harry Potter magic, you know? The inside doesn't need to suit the outside, because that's just movie making, okay? And to be frankly honest, there's a lot more in the movie that puts me off in terms of it doesn't realistically work. This is none of my issues here. It's totally fine. You're not thrown off by this, but like if you try to completely build this, then this is becoming an issue, I tell you. So again, I decided to stay with one hallway over here, this corridor I'm building. And again, I'm yet again building my little pizza slice here to make sure that I have a nice area to work with. So another big advantage of the pizza slice to kind of stay in that little metaphor. And now you can see, by the way, I'm copying things over to see how that goes. You can see now I'm saving to not kind of force a crash or something like that. Here you can see I was clicking it over exactly by 1 step if you keep angle snap turn on. This is exactly the 15-degree snap, and I put these pink walls in as a distance piece for me. You'll see in a second how exactly I'm going to do this. The reason I put this in pink is simple, just visibility, okay? I don't want to make this grayish or anything. It should be very visible for me. And now, once I got this, I then started to copy over my pieces in a way that they exactly match this distance. So I'm essentially building my pizza piece perfectly fine, because then you can do the final rotation on the 15-degree snap. This is very important, because if you do not do this with the snap, you need to pinpoint this with the free 360 degrees rotation. It is, let me tell it the way it is, it's impossible. You'll never do that seamlessly. So what I create is basically one part of the entire thing, which is a perfectly seamless creation, as you can see. And that's why I put the pink barriers in as a distance piece for me to know. Now, as with all good pizzas in the world, sometimes you may think your choice was good, but then you figure one ingredient isn't great. But instead of just changing that ingredient on the entire pizza, in our example, we only need to change it on that one slice of pizza until we are very happy with the final result. This is exactly what I did over here. I created a layout. I created a, kind of a pizza slice that I'm very much fine with, and it made myself also feel very nice. But very nice is also a good segue into Instant Gaming, which is a sponsor of our channel, as you may know by now. And in a second, we're going to keep on talking about this wonderful game again. But if you want to support the channel and these weird buildings I do and keep me that freedom, check out the link from Instant Gaming. You can grab any kind of game, DLC, or even in-game currencies, or also currencies for Steam and whatever, always to a good discount. Even Xbox Live and so on is included. 3 months, as you can see over here, is available as well for discount. Same goes with PlayStation. So they also have a pretty nice support, and you just get that easily via email. Super simple, and the good thing is you support me directly, because a small fee of that lands on my account, but also if I match a certain account number, then I also get paid for that, which is fully transparent, obviously the sponsor of the channel, and you'd help me out and also give me the freedom to not be super dependent on the algorithm, which always is a bit of a tricky thing, and it would help me to stay in the crazy camel area of creating weird stuff like this, which took me over a week to build, and in total somewhat 30-ish hours that I crammed in today's video. And without that, I would need to be a bit more efficient on videos, and that would definitely change the quality. Here you can see a little jump forward. As I was happy with my pizza slice of the building facades, I went on to the rooftop, which is that kind of overgrown, mossy kind of thing. But if you look closely, I mean, we have these kind of nice grass pieces in the game, but they didn't offer enough depth for me. It becomes very repetitive of a texture if you only use that one. It's a great texture, but given the size we build over here, it looks very dull from the top if you don't put anything else in. So I put a couple of bushes in and, you know, made sure that they kind of form this almost like mossy look. But again, if you look at the real shot in the movie, it just gives you that idea that it is mossy. But obviously, as it is so big, there surely are some smaller bushes or periwinkle or something like that is grown over there. So that's why. Also, I did do a couple of adjustments here with the tunnel, the hallway, and I put some lamps in. The problem obviously always is you can't test this in-game because Frontier, please fix it, okay? We need these lights to be turned on daytime when they're indoors, please, because that would help us tremendously to see where we place these things. I mean, you can overcome that by using capture mode. I also use these things over here, which looks super nice, but I will face off a little bit of an issue later on, because I wanted to have these panels on the sides completely white and bright as it is, and it looks good, but it seems like there's some weird stuff going on with the lights later on. Here you can see it's nicely lit in white, but later on when everything is copied, it becomes somewhat blackish. It is bright, but I don't know if there's too much light going on. Not sure what exactly it is, but yeah, this is the moment where we move on to the next part of the video. As you've seen, now we get into the full complex. Chapter 2 is the Corpus, as I call it, and this is where we completely do the full rotation. As you can see over here, we have a perfect circle now of our pizza slices. As you can see, I was then starting to delete some of the pizza slices because apparently this is not a full circle, and then I needed to flatten the terrain over here to put some pathways actually in. And here you can see how that really nicely worked with the sizes available. I am pretty happy with how that worked. You can see this is just, I did that off screen. You don't need to watch me kind of flatten the ground the whole time. And as you can tell, in the center, you can see all these kind of little brown circular pieces. This is always my pivot point. And fun fact, because I was always copying these things, I think at the end, when I deleted them all, there were over 1,000 pieces only in that center because of all that copying. But it was necessary to copy all these bits over. But you can see with these modules, changes later on the individual modules were super simple. I wasn't happy with certain things. I changed a couple of things and then just rotated them back in, and boom, here you go. I needed to figure something else that has the same rotation. Well, use the same pivot point and copy things around. Super simple. It's really, really that simple. And once the corpus was done, it was really time to make it shine. And so it's not always about the building itself. You could see that building as an individual piece now. That would be fine. But what really makes the build movie accurate is if you put the surroundings in the right way. And this is where my idea came in to, build the water flow over here. I was a bit hesitant because in the one I did in Jurassic World Evolution 2, I used the lagoons as a water kind of source in here, which obviously was because we didn't have deep water, and the shallow water just didn't look like a proper river leading into the complex. Realistically, a lagoon makes a lot more sense because it would go into the hallway, but as we see later on in the movie, the water actually in that area isn't as deep. So I think the deep water is exactly the right thing we need to have over here. Speaking of the corpus, we've had the same kind of idea of the corpus, but now it's time to give it the characteristics. And as you can tell, my technique of having all these modules is now really shining. I could just go to one of the windows, change a bit of the style I was liking, use one of the pivot points, copy that to the other side, and then just simply rotate that into the position I need it to be, and it will always be very much accurate to where it is. As you can see over here, I just then took one of the builds, changed a couple of things up, made sure that they look like the way I wanted them to. I can really work on the details, and once I'm done with this, just copy that over, and as you can see over here, using that almost like a slider in a graphics program when you have different layers that you can layer on top of each other. Surely this looks super simple now, but you know, all the kind of preparation to make this modular is needed to achieve something like this later on. It's a lot of preparation in your head mostly to come up with the correct modules you'll need later on. And as I said, I think the idea of a pizza is really a very good example for that. I think it's a very, very good example to understand the idea of these modules. Obviously, you can also think of different kind of forms and formats. You know, if you build like a triangular thing, you're gonna make like one edge of the triangle that you'll copy over, given the triangle is always the same shape, obviously. But yeah, so that's how you do that. You can see I'm adjusting some of the angles here. And again, this is where the modularity helped me yet again, because these three separate one from each other. I could then go and change the inside a little bit. I did a bit of trickery over here. Realistically, I would have needed to build these walls completely anew. But you know what? As the overall radius for me was big enough, I got away with like sinking them into each other slightly. And in the bigger scale of things, it just didn't matter that much. You don't really see that I tricked this. You know, we will have a bit of rocks in front of it anyways and a couple of other things. So the fact that this is not the perfect radius is kind of hidden away nicely, simply because, you know, it always. So that's another big issue of the build. The whole build tightens up to the back. I'm gonna put this image in again so you can see what I'm talking about. All right, here you have it, and there you can see it tightens towards the back. So it does look a bit like a, you know, a horseshoe in that kind of sense, that it definitely has that weird form to it. And this is why I was trying to, you know, come up with a solution to do this. As I said, there are people who have done this on the workshop already. There are some really great depictions of this Biosyn Research Facility, and they're all looking really great and super detailed, but they're all more going into the way that Frontier also did in Jurassic World Evolution 2, where they had this complex done in a almost perfect-ish way. And I do assume that they still got some of the input files from Universal, but maybe they are not even consistent with themselves. I don't know, but like from everything I did research into all the things, I came to the conclusion that I needed to do a bit more accuracy in terms of making it movie accurate. So the first thing I needed to do is change the color a little bit, and you know, that is one of the few times where the modularity is a bit of an issue, because I needed to recolor each individual module myself once. But you know, to be fair, it just worked relatively quick, so that's fine. Then I also needed to thicken that main complex build towards the center, which again is something that you do see from when the helicopter flies in. It is definitely thicker. I could have gone even thicker here in a bit, but I ended up with again, finding the right balance. You know, for the looks of it, I think it looks perfect, but it's not as much as I could have gone for. I could have made this all a lot more thicker to the center, and then also create that indoor backyard area a bit more smaller to be more in line with the set, actually, rather than the CGI. But I try to move in and, you know, have like a best of both worlds, if you will. So yeah, I'm kind of happy with it, because I feel like it's really the perfect balance between the two. You can't really go for the perfect accuracy. I would need the model for that, and if they have any, and I guess if they have one, you'd still find that it's not accurate for what they did on set. So yeah, I think the theory about this is clear. We want to get a perfect installment that is usable in the game, yet again looks very close to the original, but obviously isn't, and it makes the whole setting believable. The difference between this build and the one I did in Jurassic World Evolution 2 is beyond ridiculous, obviously, because I'll upload this to the workshop. You can use this as a fully operational park. It's actually ridiculous, and you can use that as your starting point to build a crazy facility if you want. It is everything you need will be in there. There's going to be a arrival point. There is going to be facilities. There's going to be a hyperloop station, as the real thing has as well, and there's also going to be a viewing gallery for a bigger portion outside of this main complex. So if you've got animals animals roaming around, which I do have on the map. Later on, you'll see that you'll be able to then have them, use that actually. I do need to do a couple of smaller fixes before uploading, but that's just minor. I need to disable a couple of collisions so people actually move inside of the facilities. I forgot about the fact that guests have collision as well, but yeah. So this is one of the few times over here where I'm not using the circular trick, because that kind of weird support structure seems to be not fully placed everywhere around the build. So I use this just in a couple of areas rather than everywhere, and so I wanted to make this look a bit more individual, hence not rotating that perfectly but placing this by hand, which again sometimes it does help in order to create certain areas and make them feel more realistic. Because not everything in a build like this would be perfectly symmetric, which is another trap in which a lot of people will fall eventually. And I also fell into that trap a million times, especially in my older builds. When you build stuff that needs to be looking realistic, by the way, that also goes hand in hand for movies themselves. Movies do also make the same mistake as well. Some movies do it better than others, but the thing is, most buildings are not perfectly parallel in any kind of sense. Even if they're like perfectly circular, you'll not have everything perfectly aligned. Some windows will be off, some stuff will be off. This is just to break the kind of perfection. We are as humans, we are not used to perfectionistic stuff, We are not used to perfection. Even our faces are not a perfect symmetry at all. It's maybe you know all these kind of TikTok videos or so where people create like the perfect symmetric face of someone, and then you've got like a VIP or so on, and then they look totally off, There are just a very few people on the planet who have a almost perfectly symmetric face, and funnily enough, they are not seen as beautiful. So yeah, what makes things beautiful, what a segue by the way, are the details, because the details break with that kind of perfect symmetry, which puts you off, but also they add a lot of character to a build. And this complex had a lot of character by having typically a lot of energy-based stuff on the roof, on the ceiling. There's a lot of like solar panels and stuff like that. And there's also a couple of air ducts and stuff, as you can see. We're placing them all in here. I went a bit like random with those. I could have gone the extra mile and tried to make that even accurate enough, because that one shot we have is very, very nice to look at, and you could even go and try to make that perfectly accurate. But to be honest, in game, you will not notice. You will just look at it and say, oh yeah, like there are air ducts, yes, there are like solar panels, yes, there are entry points and antennas and stuff, yes, there are generators, yes. Okay, and then your brain is like, okay, this is it. This is the one I've seen in the movie, because you will not be able to tell if that one air duct went to the left or to the right at this specific point. So I saved a bit of time here. It's hilarious to say, because again, I spent 30-ish and more hours on that, including the planning and research. I even watched the movie again and paused at some points to just see that again. It's not that bad of a movie. I remembered it to be a bit worse, but it's actually kind of okay. It's maybe it changed. My perception changed because of the new one. I don't know, but yeah. So I guess that's the whole story in the time lapse, and now it's time, guys, to have a look how it all is looking in the game. So I will hand you over now to the capable hands or hooves of Rudi. So let's have a look at this thing in all its glory. Unfortunately, I cannot put it in play right now. I'll do it in a couple of moments, but yeah, the weather is going to be the issue. I don't know if I've talked about that in the time lapse, so I'm gonna talk you through in a bit. But yeah, so this is the final build. I am incredibly proud of the final result. There was a lot of trial and error to get it really as movie accurate as possible, because there have been a couple of very nice ones on the workshop already, but they all suffered from the same kind of problem. They went for and this is by any means a criticism. It's just like a different approach, They went for what kind of also Frontier did with the one in Jurassic World Evolution 2, and also what you can find on technically what would be the architecture. But the most prominent issue, and I talked about that in the time lapse, is that, movie architecture doesn't always make sense. And it's kind of the same with this build too, in different kind of camera angles, and that's the problem when these buildings are mostly CGI. The scale and size doesn't really work out. So we, for example, have the atrium over here, or like the inner circle, you know. And there've been some scenes, especially you see them from the likes of over here with like the waterfall over here. Or give me a second, for a second we'll turn on the play button just so you can see. Just a little moment, there we have it. That should not be too much of an issue. So this is my fake waterfall over here. You know, it doesn't really look that good, but I tried my best in kind of faking that little waterfall that comes down here from the water actually in the movie. But again, it just doesn't really work. You know, this is kind of the scale you have from in here, and it looks like as if right over here on the left hand side there is directly the rest of it. I don't mind these wobbly paths over here. Tried my best in mimicking the kind of idea here, but I figured that I don't know who designed the pathing in the movie. It's horrible, and maybe this is where Frontier took the inspiration for their builds. I don't hope, I really do hope they didn't, but yeah. So that's that. Also with the scaling, we can't really get these you know, statues to the same size or right size. Unfortunately, this thing over here needs to be bigger, but that's already the biggest we can get it to, and these things need to be a bit more stretched towards the top. But you know, I don't mind. I think it's close enough, and we've got some wonderful, you know, doors over here. And to be fair, we can't do it right now, but we'll get into these things because I also built the inside. Now, that's being said, if we have a look, you can see from the outside, this thing is a lot bigger than actually you think. And also, if we just fly over here, you can see it's a bit of an interesting size. It doesn't really look like a circle anymore. It does look almost like these kind of iron hooves for like horses and stuff, horseshoes I think they're called, you know. It's almost more likely looking like a horseshoe a bit like, because the from the perspective in the movie, and I kind of watched the trailer again and stuff like that, it seems like that obviously this kind of part over here is a bit thicker, and it goes a bit thinner to these kind of arms towards the end, and it just kind of creates that very, very difficult, I have to say, it's like a very difficult shape to be made in game. It's almost impossible to get exactly that shape, because you can't really use the circle trick for that. And you know, I've talked you through, I guess, to some of the process, but it's been really hard to achieve the same look. So what I did, in fact, is I just kind of tried to make sure that we always are in this kind of perspective over here from the movie shot, like from the trailer shot, because I think this is the one where you learn the most from. I have shown some of these in the build, but you know, this is exactly what I wanted to achieve. So here we got that, and then I put like the movie shot next to it. Actually, you know what? I'll actually put that one right next to here. So we have that now on the left hand side, and you can see the right direct comparison to the shot in the movie. Just add a couple clouds over here. I think, you know, in the movie it actually is a little bit more like so. I'm just gonna fly in here and zoom in a little more, see if we can place that right next to it. So it's somewhat like this. It's kind of the movie shot, and this is where I try to base it off of. And also, I don't know if that is a bit more further down or whatever from the perspective. You can zoom in a bit more. So this is the way I try to build it, and unfortunately this is by any means going to be a blueprint. So and you know, going into the game, you can now tell this thing, if I do kind of, you know, select everything over here and confirm, you can see this is another 40,000 objects almost that we have over here. So can't really create anything out of that. So this is a little bit of an issue. We do obviously have also some dinosaurs roaming around. I hope they will be more open and more often in here, but they kind of seem to not go here anyways. They're all chilling here in the back. Obviously we've got the Giga, we've got the we've got the where are they all? Oh, look, they're actually kind of over here. So we have Apatosaurus over there, another Apatosaurus, another Apatosaurus. Where do we have the Giga and the Rexy? There we have the Giga, and there we have the Rexy. Obviously these two. And the Terry is also somewhere around over here. Let's have a look where that one is. These are the galleys. Is that the Terry over there? Yes, it's all the way in the back here. Oh my god, all the way back here. I wanted to just like bring them all in here into the atrium. Actually, you know what, we could. Oh no, I don't even have a team for this. Unfortunately, I need to have that in Sandbox to just move dinosaurs. That would be so much fun. But anyways, I'm gonna leave the game on play now, so you can see what kind of the issue is with weather on the map in a second. That was horrible. So Frontier, if you're watching, please change this. I want to be able to set every map on a default non-weather, because like this snow effect at the beginning is not really bad. You know, that one over here is okay, but as it all covers in snow, it was impossible to. There you have that. It's like a little click, and then the weather changes to like a snowstorm. That's always the same when you boot into the map, and you really have to save it on a sunny kind of condition to be able, you know, to quickly change things or see things. Otherwise, the only chance you have is go into the capture mode, put it to light rain, which weirdly enough is the only thing that works, put it on fast, and then wait a couple of minutes until everything cleared down, and then you can go back into the game, and for at least a moment or two it works, but just really not long enough to. And I waited a long time to have the dinosaurs in the right spot, but then again it doesn't work either, because when they're in the right spot, I have to clear the weather again, which takes minutes, and so they keep on moving. So that is a bit of a tricky one. But I promise you to go inside. So now as the weather changes, it's a perfect moment to actually go inside. So what we got to do for that is we got to take our first-person camera, and if I did my job right, I should be able to go through. No, actually I turn off the collision. Why is that all working? That is a bit of an odd one. Hold on, is the collision really turned off? Oh, it's on. Well, never mind then. Let's see if I can walk through now. Hello? Can I do? No, I still can't walk through. Well, then let's just fly through and put ourselves behind here. Because there is... Oops. Yeah, it's actually very, very dark in here. So what we can do is we can... Where's that? We should be able to select this and turn on the torch. Where's the torch? There's the torch. Woo! We have it. Look at that. And then we are inside of it. And I did actually build the absolute inside, and yeah, so there's the arrival point even in the back here. I don't even know why there is no one in the park. Should actually be someone in here by now, but hey. So that's that, and then you can actually follow all the way through here. We've got all the whole complex being built, and you actually come to one of the viewing galleries over here. As you can see, this one unfortunately is broken down right now. I thought I don't have any breakdowns in Sandbox. Apparently I have. So if we go to Sandbox settings, can I actually change this? Well, actually, you know what? It doesn't matter for you. So instant construction, invincible vehicles, instant maintenance, wear and tear off. Yeah, there you have it. Apply. Is that actually fixing them then? Or are they just broken down now? Okay, well, I would need to... Oh my god. Anyways, don't mind this. But yeah, so this is how it works. The problem is you have to set the whole game, by the way, to nighttime. If we put it to nighttime, and this is another change that Frontier really needs to do. You go to nighttime, and if we are about to go in now, you do see that the lights are working, and we can put ourselves in here. Oh wait, hold on, obstructed. You're gonna have to start on the path. That's why I didn't cover them up over here. And then you go in here. You can even use the torch as well, and that just kind of creates this very interesting look here, which I think is funny. The only real downside is like these panels, they're fully white, and I'm not sure why the light is doing this weird stuff to them. Well, these lights are all turned the wrong way around. Yeah, sometimes you have it like super bright white like here, sometimes you don't. But it's so cool, you can like go all the way around. I managed to actually build this entire thing inside of the whole complex. You know, I could have gone crazy and put like rooms to everywhere, but you can see we have some doors, you know, moving to the left and right. I'm just like super annoyed that this all doesn't look white for whatever reason. It's like a bit of a light issue here, I should say. So yeah, there's the other arrival point over here. You can't barely walk here because something is weird with pathing. And there is like somewhere over here is the entrance exit on the other side. Yeah, you can see now everything is back covered in snow, which yeah, is kind of what you don't want to have. But I mean, realistically, it could be in snow, so that's not really a big problem. But for the build itself, I mean, it does look good though. It does look fantastic. I mean, just like the snow-covered one with a light sun over here. Oh my god, it does look gorgeous. So don't get me wrong, I like the snow effects for the visuals, but like for building and showcasing, that is really not what you want. But anyways, guys, this has been an absolute blast to be built. I thought it's gonna be faster as always, and so I spent a couple days longer, a week and a half on this build alone, but I think it's very worth it. It's actually going to be on the workshop for you right now, so you can grab it yourself, use that as a map, you can connect everything. Actually, everything is connected, the only thing is you need to fix that. So as everything is connected via Hyperloop, can I see that somewhere? Management views, and then Hyperloop. Oh well, there you have the entrance, and then we should also have something like transportation. Do we have some monorails? Oh wait, hold on. Hyperloops. There we have them. You can see the Hyperloops are going from A to B and so on. So everything is connected, and theoretically, people should come into the park. And I'm not sure if it's not opened or what the problem is. 7 issues, no guests at all. Wait, hold on. Park rating, guest count 317. Well, I haven't seen them yet, so that's an interesting idea that we have seemingly guests in the park. I'm not sure where exactly they are. Are they just gathering together at some of the path that we have here? Wait, hold on. I want to just quickly check if... There's actually no one. Well, someone spawned here on the seats, that's all. And maybe in the viewing galleries, right? So if I go into some of the viewing domes, I assume... Oh my god, are they like slightly colored in snow too? No, I'm not, but I thought they were. Yeah, I don't know. Wait, hold on. Do they have winter jackets in here in this game? And... Are you kidding me? So this game does react to winter, while the Planet games don't. Is that correct? I do hope, though, that there is a reason for them eventually to go through here. Maybe you don't see them even because they're like right away going into the Hyperloop, and there's no need for them to walk over here. So I technically would need to put like a facility in here somewhere and hide those facilities somewhere over here. I think that could work, you know, to make them go in here. But you know, that shouldn't be the problem. Guys, I really do hope you enjoyed this build as much as I did, because I did enjoy this quite a lot. I mean, it had to be done because I did this in Jurassic World Evolution 2, which was a huge success on the channel. It was a lot of fun, but it was obviously insanely limited. Now it is the opposite. We have everything at hand, and therefore my urge to make it as best as I can was super big, and I hope I could deliver. I'm very happy with it. I mean, could it be better? Of course, always can, but I think I'm close to what I could have done in a, you know, relatively nice time, I guess. But yeah, the build itself, I think, stands out. It looks good. I tried several different things to see if it works or not, but at the end of the day, I think the mixture of stylized effects and maybe making it look as best as I can, without really going into the realism details. You know, you could have used real windows, for example, or make certain things even more realistic, but it wouldn't add to it. So I tried to go for like a interpretation in the game that comes as close to the real thing in the movie, just because of the way it's built. And I really hope you enjoyed that. Well, if you did, and you want to see more crazy stuff like that in the future, Jurassic builds, Planet builds, whatever, make sure to subscribe to the channel. That helps me the most to tell the algorithm you like the stuff you've just seen. And then I'll be more than happy to welcome you in the next weird thing that I'm going to build. I've got some really crazy ideas, but the next build most likely is going to be the T-Rex habitat for our Jurassic Park 1998. Can't wait to show you that one. Until then, have a wonderful time. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and blah, 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 all that kind of YouTube stuff. And I see you in the next one.